good.
I have to say, the last time I saw you on stage was as Fraulein Schneider in Cabaret.
Oh, yes.
That must have been an amazing role to do. But very different from, the sort of role that you're perhaps best known for.
They did let me out, so to speak, out of glamour, didn't they? Yes, well, that's a marvellous, Cabaret's a marvellous musical. And the situation is so cruel and so terrible for those two elderly people. And she dares not love him because he's Jewish and is about to be sent off to a camp. So it was really, really heart-rending. It was very good. The last number, I can't remember what it was called, but that really went to the heart of the matter. It's really, really good.
What's it like taking part in a big West End musical nowadays? Has it changed over the years?
No, I've done four or five, I think. No, I don't think it changes. The dancing gets sort of more daring. Well, certainly in Cabaret, it was very daring dancing. No, and that was one of the things that was I didn't enjoy in Cabaret, because the orchestra usually plays an overture, and it didn't in Cabaret. It went straight into it. And I don't know, when the music plays, it gears you up. Not that one needed to be geared up in that way, because it was such a tough piece, but in all the others, on your toes, and sound of music, and nonsense, yes.
Any more questions?
Are you still in touch with Patrick Whitney, and if yes, how is he?
I am, but really around Christmas. I mean, in fact, his son, because he doesn't communicate really now, his son sent me an email yesterday and told me to read the Daily Express. Did you see anything about him in the Daily Express? Because I don't take it, and I didn't get the email till I came back from the country, and it was too late then. No, but, I mean, he's not terribly well, but he's fine in spirit. I'm trying to remember. I sent him wishes for something or other a few months ago. And Rupert emailed me, and Patrick said, "Oh, how lovely. I didn't know anyone was still alive." No, he's lovely, and I'd like to see him again in Palm Springs, but I don't think he's receiving a lot of visitors.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Could you tell us about your time on Columbo at the Royal Court?
About Columbo?
Yeah.
God, that Columbo keeps coming, doesn't it?
It's on telly every 3 weeks, I think.
Oh, don't! Well, that wasn't the time, I don't think, no. Well, I know that was another film, and I went there and I got the earthquake, the really bad earthquake. Columbo was... Columbo's really funny, because you know Willie Hyde-White. Willie Hyde-White was in it. And Richard Basehart was my husband. And I'm not going to spoil any stories, because you must have seen it. And my husband and I had just murdered, the night before, Willie Hyde-White's employer. And Richard Basehart and I were famous actors in the piece. And so we went to the house to console the manservant, which is Willie Hyde-White. And it was my first shot in Columbo. So I was behaving. And we went there, and the door opened, there was Willie Hyde-White. "Oh, good morning, Mr. So-and-so. Oh, good morning, Mr. So-and-so. Do come in." I thought, this is rather strange. His employer's just been murdered the night before, And he's grinning all over his face. Anyway, we played the scene, and I thought, because it was my first shot, I didn't say anything. And 2 weeks later, we were sitting having lunch, and the second assistant came round and threw us all a piece of script and said, "There's a reshoot." "Oh, why is that?" Willie said. I said, "I think I can tell you." I said, "We just murdered your employer and you were smiling all over your face." I never read other people's lines. So I thought, I did form the opinion that the director wasn't terribly on the ball. He'd allowed that.
A few notes, perhaps.
Yes, right.
Another
Willie used
question.
to come with, his wife used to bring him a hamper with some white wine and napkins and all sorts of lovely things in aspic. He was well looked after. Yes? Oh.
Honor, when you were in the Avengers, you got a chance to record Kinky Boots. You also did the Honor Blackman Book of Self-Defense, so you sort of went into other areas. Were you ever
I wish you hadn't mentioned.
Honor, I want to ask you another question.
That recording was a nightmare because, I mean, in those days, you know how people record things these days. We had been working, as we did every week, including Saturdays. In the first year, we worked on Sundays as well.
Blimey.
And we were rehearsing up till 5 o'clock on the Saturday. We were taken off by the Decca man to the studio to do it. And Patrick it was under duress that he said he would do it. He said at the beginning, never, I cannot hold a tune and I have no sense of rhythm. And I, able to hold both, couldn't believe there was such a person in the world. And he proved it. It was a nightmare. We couldn't get it going at all. So we went across to the pub and had a couple of brandies and came back, and Patrick talked it, as you know, and the producer went every time he should start his line.
Oh, wow.
And that's it. You know, it was one of them. And wherever I go, if they're not very kind to me, they play that damn record.
And I bet you thought it had been buried, and then it got revived again, didn't it? In the charts in the 90s.
When it first went out, everybody said how dreadful. And my children used to go to school with their heads hanging down. And then it was resuscitated. It's a classic now, so they can rise again.
I think there's a question there.
With martial arts being a big thing of TV and film now, how does it feel to be the First Lady of martial arts? And also, to continue, how did the book, Honor Blackman's Self-Defense, come into play?
I mean, I'm delighted that martial arts is amongst females now, because as the world goes on, the more likely they are to use it, it would seem. I did have one opportunity to use a karate chop with this guy with the knife and everything, but my mother was in the room, and I thought, if I don't, you can kill somebody, you know, with a karate chop if you do it right. And so I didn't do it. And I've looked back on that moment all the time and wondered if I might have made it. It would have been lovely to clobber him. Anyway, sorry, what was the last part of the...
How did the book, Honor Blackman book of self-defense?
Oh, yes, well, you know, they ask you to do all sorts of things. They asked me to write this book on style and whatnot, and they entitled it how to be half your age or something for the rest of your life. I don't know what it was. The title was nothing to do with me. Yes, well, we had a photographer, and we were in Brighton, which was where Joe Robinson belonged, and we went into parks and onto the sand and onto all sorts of places to take these pictures. And Joe and Doug Robinson, Joe is the elder of the two, and there was a film called Half a Sixpence or something, Tuppenny Halfpenny, or no, that Joe was in. Huh?
Two farthing.
Sorry?
The kid for two farthing.
Ah, right. Was that it?
Yeah.
With the Joe was in?
Yeah.
And I would have thought, I don't know if he promised well as an actor, but it didn't go any further. But I think Doug was... I'm analysing them as I sit here. Joe was a very good-looking fellow, and Doug is not a very good-looking fellow. And Joe had formed the gym, and Doug helped him. And so there was a sort of rivalry. So we had this situation of doing, supposing somebody gets at you when you're at a bar, and how to throw them, how to do it, and all the rest of it. And in different situations that a woman might meet in everyday life. I'd love to see a woman at a bar suddenly. Anyway, and so what the photographic session turned out to be, which was, he did the last one, and that was a spectacular throw. He did the last. We had this rivalry. I thought, wonder who this big book is supposed to be about. But they were, in general, they were. I mean, Joe was lovely. I must watch my tongue because everybody's still alive. But anyway, that's how it happened, and it was a very, very practical book, actually. And certain things you wish women would remember. Like, somebody tries to strangle you, don't, do one of those, because you can get more force and get the hands off, Huh?
There is very few books done by actors or actresses.
Yeah.
And so yours is quite a collector's item.
Yes. Collector's item, yeah. I'm a collector's item.
You're unique. Yes. That's what you are. And speaking of which,
yes,
I believe you're thinking about another one-woman show
Yes,
soon.
I am. I bet nobody here has seen any of my one-woman shows.
Yeah.
Shame on you. I've done 4, and I was still doing one when I did cabaret, and I had to stop because obviously I couldn't do it through cabaret because I was on every night. That's the sadness. I would love to be in the theatre. But I will not do 6 months. Cabaret was the last. It takes your life away. And I now have 4 of the most glorious little grandchildren, and the oldest is 7, and they're so lovely, and I don't want to tie my life away from them. So, yes, and so I'm thinking, because a one-person show, it's a one-night stand. I'm waiting for the reaction. Everybody gets worked up about this. And so I can say, yes, I will do it that Sunday, no, I won't do it, whatever. And it's just one night, which is great, and I love doing it. And everybody says, isn't it terrifying being on the stage alone? And I suppose it was at the beginning. But now I rather resent anybody else being on the stage with me.
Well,
so, I love it.
I have to say, I think we could carry on for at least another hour, but I fear that time is rapidly catching up with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge thank you to Mr. Honor Blackman.